Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by Ernest. So welcome, thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
So, interesting, we were having a bit of a chat before and you mentioned that when you transitioned, you were actually working as a school teacher.
Yes, yeah. I teach in the western suburbs of Melbourne at a really large secondary school. I started there about the time that I came out in my private life. And about 3 years into working there, I decided that I sort of needed to transition medically. So I did. And it's been a pretty interesting couple of years since then.
So how did that sort of go,
That process?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we had a trans student at the school, and he sort of was a trailblazer for me, really. I mean, he did the hard work. He was the brave one. We had a Safe Schools coalition at the school. We still do. We've done a lot of work with the staff on issues around gender and sexuality. That being said, I guess was still as apprehensive as people probably assume I would be in that situation. Obviously, it's a pretty public job. 1,400 students at the school. It's a pretty small community in the western suburbs. So I came out to staff at a staff meeting on the first day of the year in 2013. So it's about 150 staff at the school. So I stood up and did that. And yeah, it's been sort of a bit of a journey ever since then.
Wow. So was it like a point on the agenda?
Pretty much. I actually sort of was there to do some staff development about the student who was transitioning, and as part of that presentation, I thought that was the most opportune time. My psychologist thought it was hilarious that I was doing that. But yeah, it seemed like, I guess, a way to do it and sort of take the power away from anyone who was going to sort of raise issues with it, because I think even if they weren't okay with the transition, they thought it was pretty gutsy to stand up and do it in that fashion.
Yeah. And so then how did it sort of go from there, I suppose, to the, school community, the kids and stuff?
Yeah, well, the little notice got put in the newsletter, just that I was now to be known as Mr. Price. I was also a year level coordinator for about 300 year 10 students who I'd known. I'd been their coordinator the year before, so they knew me pretty well. So I came out to them in their first assembly of the year, and then to each of my classes. And, kids talk to each other, so things got around pretty quickly. And I think there were a couple of things on Facebook about it, but apparently they were pretty positive. I guess I started taking testosterone in the Easter holidays of that school year, had surgery later that year. So I guess I kind of felt like I wanted to get in before those changes started happening in terms of the school community.
Yeah.
So
So started off with 150 staff members,
Yep.
then 300 school kids.
Yeah.
So really small steps.
Yeah, just really gradual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was going through the sort of process of getting approved for surgery and hormones at the time, and certainly did add a convincing case that I was willing to do it in this way, I think.
Yeah.
Worked in my favour.
Yeah. And sort of since sort of transitioning and all that sort of stuff in terms of within the school community, have you had any issues?
Look, yeah, there've definitely been issues. It hasn't been all smooth sailing. Remarkably, there's only been one incident with a student, and that was a student I hadn't taught, and he put something sort of not great about it on Facebook, but it was other students who actually pulled him into line, which I think was testament to the fact that young people, generally speaking, are pretty quick if they're given the tools to sort of process and ask questions that are respectful, to deal with it. Staff. It's been a more interesting process. I guess we've had a couple of staff come into the school this year who maybe haven't necessarily, I guess, dealt with things as well as I would like them to. They've never known me as anything but male, but still sometimes use female pronouns and that sort of thing. So obviously they've heard. So that's been interesting, I guess, to deal with that as well.
I suppose just if all the workplaces to think of, imagine coming out at school is kind of one of those ones that you think might be a bit...
Yeah, look, when I started teaching, which it was around the same time that I came out in my private life, I just could not conceive of ever medically transitioning purely because I couldn't conceive of doing it and keeping going in the school. Not necessarily because of the school itself, but just because of, as you say, the nature of the job. But I guess I got to a point which I think a lot of people get to transitioning where it just wasn't an option not to anymore in terms of starting medical steps. So yeah, I just sort of didn't have a choice anymore.
Mm-hmm. Speaking earlier, something completely different about you're a bit of a dog enthusiast.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the dog community of the western suburbs of Melbourne, which is pretty, I would use the word rabid, but it doesn't seem right with dogs. So there's certainly a big sort of queer dog walking community, which you just happen upon in the western suburbs. Spend a lot of my spare time obsessing about my dog, taking my dog places. So.
What sort of dog?
His mother was a sausage dog, father unknown, something taller and skinnier. So he sort of looks like a sausage dog with long legs. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you said you're sort of part of a queer. So is it a formal thing or is
no,
it just...
completely haphazard. Just sort of, I guess, one of those things where you sort of flock to like-minded people in the dog park. It's a weird world, dog walking and dog park world. With great community. I mean, I've just come across and met some amazing people as part of having a dog.
Yeah. So you said it's sort of a weird. What sort of?
It's its own social world. I mean, I guess I sort of, have always had social worlds that have existed around like activism and people I went to uni with and that kind of stuff. And this is just its whole social sort of world of its own. It's like a little... But sort of a surreal world because you only ever really talk about your dogs. So you don't sort of know who people vote for or any of these sort of other things which previously I might have used as markers of who I would pick as friends. So it can get you in some interesting sort of situations. But it's also really nice. I mean, just met some incredibly generous people and actually transitioned at the dog park as well. So that was another sort of interesting sort of step to take in terms of sort of having to out myself to people and go through that with them.
How did that go? Because I mean, I know that when I've walked through a dog park and seen a dog, I know everything about that dog, but I don't know the person.
Anything about the owner, I know. So it was kind of strange, and I did feel like I was crossing some boundary in that sense of, you don't really talk about your life at the dog park. You talk about your dog's poo and sort of stuff like that, and what the dogs are doing. But I mean, generally speaking, again, it's been pretty good. I think, like anything, you have your good days and your bad days. I think if I'm feeling not great, and someone at the dog park can call me my old name and that kind of stuff, it's not great. But generally speaking, people get on board, and they're more interested in the dog than me anyway. So.
Excellent. Well, look, a big thank you. Thank you very much, Ernest, for coming on tonight. You've been watching Transmission.